About my last book of poems, Native Guard. And Native Guard is divided into 3 sections, and the first section is all elegies for my mother, who died 25 years ago. And I've been trying for that long to write poems about that immeasurable loss and the grief that I felt when she was gone. The second section is where the book really began for me. The second section is all about the American Civil War, and the thing that I was most concerned about was, again, these kind of forgotten or buried histories. Just off the coast of my hometown is a series of barrier islands, and one of those islands is called Ship Island. And out on Ship Island is a fort that was manned by the 1st Regiment of African American Union soldiers in the Civil War. The Louisiana Native Guards were mustered into service in September, October, and November of 1862. And yet most people seem to have very little knowledge that African American soldiers fought in the war. And as a matter of fact, almost 200,000 of them fought in the war. But Eric Foner, the historian, points out that of the monuments, both north and south, only a handful mention anything about the participation of these black soldiers. Their story is a story that has been sort of buried and erased. When you go out to the fort, as I did mostly every year of my life, the park ranger in his tour mentions the Confederate soldiers that were interred on the island, and that it was an island taken over by Union troops, but nothing about the fact that these Union soldiers were black soldiers. That's where the research for this book began. I was very interested in that story, and also what takes place in the 3rd section of the book, which is all about my own connection to my South, my personal history in the Deep South, particularly growing up both black and biracial. Does anybody know what the word miscegenation means? Anybody? Anybody heard that word? No? Does anybody know that that there have been laws in this country prohibiting interracial marriage? You know that, right? So, for example, when our president was born, 5 years before I was, there were over 20 states that prohibited interracial marriage. They made it illegal for parents like mine to get married and for people like me to be born legally. Now, this is not ancient history in any way, as a matter of fact, because just about 12 years ago, the state of Alabama voted whether or not to remove the anti-miscegenation laws from the books, even though, of course, they can't be enforced now. That's against our civil rights. But 40-some% of the population voted to keep them, so that at least symbolically they could say people like me shouldn't be born legally and parents like mine be married legally in the state. And so I have a very fraught relationship to not only my Mississippi and my South, but my nation, who rendered me illegitimate in the eyes of the state. That's a lot about what that 3rd section tries to cover. Here's a poem from that section called Miscegenation. One thing I'll point out to you before I read it is that the way the laws worked at the time, not only was it illegal for my white father and my black mother to get married in the state of Mississippi, it was also illegal for them to go to a state that permitted interracial marriage and come back to Mississippi. So they actually broke 2 laws. Miscegenation. And there's an FBI file on them, I'm sure. Miscegenation. In 1965, my parents broke 2 laws of Mississippi. They went to Ohio to marry, returned to Mississippi. They crossed the river into Cincinnati, a city whose name begins with a sound like sin, the sound of wrong, miss in Mississippi. A year later, they moved to Canada, followed a route the same as slaves, the train slicing the white glaze of winter, leaving Mississippi. Faulkner's Joe Christmas was born in winter, like Jesus, given his name for the day he was left at the orphanage, his race unknown in Mississippi. My father was reading War and Peace when he gave me my name. I was born near Easter, 1966, in Mississippi. When I turned 33, my father said, "It's your Jesus year. You're the same age he was when he died." It was spring, the hills green in Mississippi. I know more than Joe Christmas did. Natasha is a Russian name, though I'm not. It means Christmas child, even in Mississippi.